If you have been following me for long enough, you will know that the Spyro Reignited Trilogy... Oh my god, I cannot wait for this. These games are such a massive part of my childhood. So many memories were crafted with these 3 adventures. Like many others out there, I started off my PlayStation journey with Crash Bandicoot. And likewise, I also spent a ton of time with those games. But conveniently enough, as that trilogy was coming to a close, and all we were getting from that orange marsupial were spin-offs, the era of the Purple Dragon was just beginning. Now, some of you are aware that I have done videos on the Spyro trilogy in the past, but that was years ago. That was before I had a camera, that's before I had decent microphone quality. Looking back now, those videos are,
I like to think that every gamer has a specific game or series of games that defines their childhood besides, you know, Pokemon.
It's a miracle I made it this far. So as we approach the glorious return of that purple dragon that we know as Spyro, I think it's important to take a look back at those original games that are getting remade in the Reignited trilogy. Starting off, of course, with Spyro the Dragon. Insomniac Games, a company known for franchises like Ratchet & Clank and Resistance, and other one-off games like Sunset Overdrive and the upcoming Spider-Man, got their start with Disruptor. Huh, okay, it's a first-person shooter. A lot of you guys don't even remember that exists, huh? Alright. With full-motion video, too. Man, what a product of its era. Okay, well, as the story goes, the game simply wasn't financially successful for the company. And in an effort to make something more family-friendly to tackle the market that the Nintendo 64 had, you make a game with a young dragon with attitude. Boom. Show me the money. The story begins in the world of dragons. Man, even that phrase brings back memories. An interview is taking place in the world of the Artisan dragons. Everything is all peaceful aside from this poor sheep. And the interviewer brings up the evil Gnasty Gnorc, who is trying to build up an evil army of minions. Another dragon steps in and calls him simple, no threat, and ugly. That last one, somehow being the final straw, causes Nasty to go on a rampage and shoot an evil spell from his scepter, encasing all of the elder dragons in crystal. Dragon-shaped crystal at that. Props to his designer mentality there, I like it. I guess Nasty is also watching this whole thing on TV or something. This interview is supposed to be taking place live. We don't really get to see him seeing it, but that's just my mind just assuming what goes on. Maybe he's just using magic, I don't know. Spyro, luckily, is able to avoid the spell due to his short size, so now it is up to him, along with his dragonfly buddy Sparks, to free all of the trapped dragons, capture all of the stolen treasure, rescue a bunch of dragon eggs, and stop Nasty Gnorc for good. Well, until he shows up again in Hero's Tale, where he looks like this thing. That's a story, alright. This is about as basic of a plot as you can get. There's a bad guy. He did a bad thing. You are the good chosen guy. Do the thing. The 90s were a much simpler time. Then, the adventure begins, and we get tossed into the world for the very first time, and I am already in love. You see, I really like a good hub world in a 3D platformer, and Spyro's really shine in my opinion. Each one is a new dragon realm, featuring an entirely new aesthetic, and with it, a new style of dragons to save. Sure, a lot of the dragons within look very similar to each other, since this is the PlayStation 1 we're talking about here, not a whole lot you can do there, but it's really neat that, hey, we're saving these guys one by one. It's cool that they all match the location that we're saving them in. As for how you save the dragons, well, that's super simplistic. You see one? Okay, well then boom, that's about as simple as that. And going the extra mile here, each dragon is its own unique character, having a name that suits the fantasy style of the game as a whole, and fully voiced dialogue.
Fairies are always on your side, Spyro.
Oh yeah, thanks bro. Many of them give you hints and advice, such as how to glide, how to tackle some enemies and whatnot, but some of them...
Spyro, it's great to see you, but I've got to go.
What? Some of the dialogue really plays up Spyro being a kid in need of some advice from his elders. Sure, it is serious business here, we gotta save all the dragons that have been captured, but sometimes a kid just wants to have some fun, you know?
Cool, Flash, do that again.
And of course, how can we forget about the fabled line, "Thank you for releasing me."
Thank you for releasing me.
Okay, I get it. Once again, PS1 we're talking about, this game is pretty ambitious for its time. It's great that there's any voice acting at all, but a lot of them just say that one line, and that's it. Some of them even share the same exact voice clip.
Thank you for releasing me.
So there's 80 dragons in total to save, right? Alright, let's see here.
Thank you for releasing me, Spyro.
Thank you for releasing me.
Thank you for releasing me. Thank you for releasing me. Thank you for releasing me. Thank you for releasing me. Thank you for releasing me. Thank you for releasing me.
15 times. Okay, good lord. Those crystallized dragons are the game's primary collectible, but there's also a handful of dragon eggs that you can retrieve by chasing and defeating these thieves. And they love to tease you too. Once they see you, they'll taunt you with a little bit of a... Oh yeah? Oh yeah, you think so, you little punk? Come here. And your reward for collecting all of these dragon eggs? Nothing? Okay, but there's also a ton of colored gems spread out everywhere, some even hidden within enemies. What about these then? Surely there's a collectible for getting these. So that's sort of the thing with Spyro the Dragon. The game just consists of throwing you into a world and go. There is a beginning and end to the levels, but as far as collecting things go, you're kinda just collecting stuff for the sake of collecting stuff. There's no incentive to do it aside from saying, you did it. As for whether or not this is a bad thing, that kinda depends on what you're okay with in a 3D platformer. The simple act of collecting things is a platforming pleasure, but what makes Spyro so special is how he plays. He is a cute and adorable purple dragon, and dragons are really cool. Dragons can do two things. They can use their wings to traverse locations a whole lot easier, and they can spit fire to vanquish their foes. Spyro can also charge endlessly too, which is just a ton of fun. At the push of a button, boom, there you go. Until you run into a wall a million times. And this sort of plays into how you defeat the enemies as well. While they really don't pose much of a threat, they take advantage of Spyro's abilities. Some enemies have some sort of metal on them, so you can't flame them. And some are really big, so charging won't leave a dent. That's a pretty neat idea. You also got a bunch of these tiny creatures all over the place too, like lizards and sheep, all of which will spawn butterflies once defeated, which are used as food for Sparks to heal himself up, which his health is an indicator of how much damage you've taken. So butterflies are healing up a dragonfly who somehow is transferring his life force and energy to a dragon. I can work with that. Sparks also helps you collect stuff. It's an interesting collectathon idea. As long as you're not inches away from death, Sparks will help you collect things, so you yourself don't have to touch the gems. He can go out and get them for you as long as they're nearby. That's really cool. It's like a reward for playing the game well, but if you're constantly on the verge of dying, the punishment isn't that bad. It just incentivizes you to get more health. Something about this just seems off. The game really tries to go out of your way to make you feel like a dragon. That's why you're even collecting gems in the first place. According to mythology, dragons loved to collect and hoard treasure. So, breaking open treasure chests and snagging the gems makes a whole lot of sense. It's a great touch. That is an attention to detail that many games don't even attempt to strive for. Why does Crash go around and collect a bunch of colored fruit? I don't know, collect 100 and you get extra life, haha. Rescuing dragon eggs and collecting treasure makes sense for Spyro as a character, but there's no real reason to go after them in terms of gameplay, aside from the sheer satisfaction of taking out those thieves. And that's not to say that every level is the same, mind you. Each one gives off a different set of platforms and challenges to tackle, as you would expect, usually sporting a unique gimmick as well. Sometimes you'll find these supercharged floors that let you charge up super fast. One level has a fairy that gives you this powerful fire breath to take down these moving suits of armor. It kind of scared me when I was a kid, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes it's something as simple as a special room hidden underground, really annoying frogs. And then there's Treetops. This level gets a lot of flack, but personally, I'm totally fine with it. It's a pretty crazy combination of floating platforms and supercharged floors, so it did lead to some, admittedly, childhood trauma, but playing it nowadays, it's not that bad. But I'll be damned, I still die often. Each hub world acts as its own level as well, with its own set of gems and dragons to find, and within them is another special level. So, Spyro can't fly normally, he can only just glide. However, that's where the flight levels come in. These are some of the best parts of the game. These are iconic to the Spyro franchise. The objective is pretty simple. There are 4 sets of 8 objects spread throughout the level, and you have a time limit to get all of them, with each one that you get giving you just a few extra seconds of time. And what's nice is that they're not necessarily a scavenger hunt. Typically, if you just go in a straight line, you're gonna hit all 4 sets in one go anyway. It's really just a matter of how fast you can do it without messing up. I just really love these, man. They really add to the idea of Spyro having great control, and these are extra little challenges that you can compare your times with your friends, which I definitely did back in the day. I always look forward to these in my playthroughs to get the best time that I could. Boss fights are a thing too, but oh boy, they're really easy. I mean, if you couldn't really grasp this by now, the game as a whole is a bit of a breeze. Not much challenge in terms of enemies or collecting. It's a simple adventure from start to finish, but the bosses, in particular, are pathetic. They all really just consist of chasing them down with a little bit of platforming and flaming them multiple times, with very slight variations throughout. The character designs are pretty neat, you know, it's a giant robot with a mohawk, that's pretty cool. And one of them is named Blowhard, which, you know what, I don't care how old I'm ever gonna get, that's just gonna consistently make me giggle. Its name is Blowhard, for crying out loud. But really, some more varied, unique, and some imposing boss fights would have been so much better. I really think it would have helped if this game took more of a Yoshi's Island approach to the bosses. You simply take some common enemies, buff them up, and give them the guise of a big baddie. That's kind of how Toasty is. You burn a bunch of sheep as fodder throughout the adventure, one of them gets pissed off and wants revenge. Boom, boss fight. And difficulty is not something I personally need in a platformer. I mean, look who's talking here, I'm obsessed with Kirby, you could have assumed I felt that way. But it can very easily feel more like busy work than genuine fun and satisfaction. The nostalgia keeps me enjoying this game from beginning to end, but that can only last so long. At least the levels are pretty short. I mean, fully completing them can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. That's it, and there's no backtracking in sight. Now, I'm not necessarily praising short levels here, but if they're as empty and repetitive as they can be sometimes, at least you're jumping between them pretty frequently. And dude, the best part of the game by far is the aesthetic. I love how this game looks. These wide and varied landscapes all evoke that feeling of exploring a fantasy world, and I am a big sucker for a platformer that has each level standing out strongly on its own, and that is exactly what we have here. Each world has its own individual style. Artisans is a bright and colorful countryside, Peacekeepers is a canyon covered by a military camp, Magic Crafters is at the top of a bunch of icy mountains, Beastmakers is a dark and gloomy swamp, and Dreamweavers consists of floating platforms, some holding a large castle. And the use of colors. Wow, the skyboxes are amazing, the color used for the platforms and the enemies are amazing. For as janky as PS1 games can look, this one still holds up really well in my opinion. And then there's the soundtrack. Oh man, composed by Stuart Copeland, the drummer from The Police. Oh man, it's so good. The music goes for catchy ambience, and it totally nails that. They're not really tracks that I would go out of my way to jam out to, but ones that fit the worlds they're in perfectly, and they feel Spyro-y, if that made any sense. Except for that title screen track, that tune, that one's bumpin'. And also, the track for Wizard Peak is damn near the same exact song they used for the credits of an old Nickelodeon program, The Amanda Show. Ah, yep, okay, that would explain it. Eventually, Spyro and Sparks make their way to Nork Nexus, Nasty's world, a tiny island in the middle of nowhere housing your final challenges. You also saved Elbin again. How? Apparently he tried to face Nasty Nork himself and then got trapped again. Ha! You big stupid idiot. Thankfully, the child is here to save the day. Grown-ups will just never understand. Actually, all of the dragons that you save in this world are ones that we've saved before. Okay, it's a bit odd to say that there are 80 dragons to save then, but okay, sure, I'll roll with it. Oh, and they also screwed up the coloring for Cletus here. Cool. Some of the enemies here also just straight up use legitimate firearms on you. My god, relax. They're trying to turn Spyro into Swiss cheese here. Wow, how is this allowed? The 90s. But soon enough, Spyro finally comes face to face with Nasty Nork himself. And so you remember how I said that all of the bosses are just, you know, you chase them down and then you hit them a couple times with the fire? Okay, so that's exactly how Nasty Nork is too. You chase him down twice, not even 3 times, and that's it. Okay then, that was the game. Oh hey, now it's Spyro's turn to get interviewed. He was the hero after all. Things are peaceful in the Dragon Kingdom once again. Although there is still some treasure to find, and thus, we have a reward for beating the final boss, Nasty's Loot. A level filled to the brim with treasure, and it's just up to you to traverse through all of the locked doors to get to them. Ending off at... oh my god, it's beautiful. I love this stage so much. So many games, in my opinion, don't give you this fulfilling reward for all of your hard work, but a sandbox where you get to just play around and fly infinitely and collect the most amount of treasure in a single stage with no real threat? That's so good. Spyro is now on top of the world, rocking these super tubular shades here, and the game also kind of ends on a cliffhanger. The dragons get recrystallized and that's it. Despite the sequel not having a single thing to do with captured dragons. Okay. And I can't forget to talk about the credits. These are really cool too. Instead of having text just scroll by, there's these really cool fly-through shots of all of the levels in the game, with some more of that catchy music. A really great end to the game. No sheep were harmed during the adventure, huh? And yeah, that is the first Spyro the Dragon, a game that has a lot going for it, but is definitely bogged down by easy difficulty, really barren levels, no incentive to collect stuff. It is a game that is instrumental to my childhood, but I really would not be surprised if it just doesn't click with you, especially if you don't care about the aesthetic. Really looking forward to hearing people be like, man, was Spyro 1 always this boring? Yeah, it always was, shut up. Also, can't forget to mention this, fun fact, there is a demo for Crash 3 Warped accessible on the title screen. It may seem weird, but you gotta remember, Naughty Dog and Insomniac Games had a really great partnership back in the day. So much so that if you play Crash 3, there's a demo of Spyro 1 in there too, accessed in almost the same way. Really not a big deal by today's standards, I just think it's really neat. It's a cool part of PlayStation history. If you're looking for a platformer where the atmosphere is one of its strong suits, then definitely give this game a shot. If you're looking for something a little bit more, well, that's where the sequel came into play. So tune in next time because we're going to be taking a look at Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage. Or Gateway to Glimmer if you live in Europe. It doesn't matter what series it is, the name changes between regions will be the death of me.